Yeah, thank you, Annick. Good morning to all of you. This presentation builds indeed a bit further on what Anton has been saying. The presentation is about, well, it has another focal area, meaning we are talking now about buildings of local authorities. And the target is again deep energy retrofits. Yeah, my name is Geert Goden. I'm a consultant at Factor 4. Factor 4 is specialized in energy efficiency in mostly existing buildings, and within that niche, so to speak, we are specialized in performance contracting, so kind of EPC contracts like Anton was explaining. Okay, let's try if I can manage to control these slides here. Yeah, okay, that's fantastic. Okay, FALCO, I've highlighted the letter A in the acronym here, is about ambitious actions in the context of climate change. And if we try to have a look what the scene is at the local municipalities, what do we see? Okay, many municipalities have some kind of midterm climate commitments, political commitments, for example, through initiatives like the Covenant of Mayors, with midterm objectives or short-term commitments 2030. Unfortunately, few have financial plans how to reach the committed goals. That's what we observe, at least. Now, on the other hand, even less municipalities have long-term commitments, IDs, which to a certain extent makes sense. And by long-term, I mean 2050, where well, the European economy and also the built environment is expected to be climate neutral. And as you can expect, okay, accordingly, financial plans for that faraway purpose, faraway objective are not yet available. Now, there is a paradoxical situation which arises now and which may create a headache for local authorities. On the left-hand side, you see for the intermediate level, let's say, business cases are being developed, and those business cases are likely to be budget neutral or even budget positive, because like Anton also was explaining, what are you doing there? In several of these cases, you're harvesting the low-hanging fruit, so which has a positive impact on your business case. But on the other hand, if you have this kind of short-term or mid-term objectives, there is this risk for technical and financial lock-in. And that's also what Anton has been saying. A typical technical lock-in might be that you're installing PV panels on your roof, whereas your roof is not insulated. It's a blunt mistake, but okay, it explains well what I mean by technical lock-in. And also financial lock-in may mean that, okay, you're absorbing financial capacity, which you might need in turn to invest in your deeper innovation targets. Now, if you compare this, what's happening if you focus on the long term, okay, if you go in the long term and you take initiatives, or you take energy efficiency measures accordingly, obviously the risk for technical and financial lock-in is less or even non-existent. But okay, the other side of this decision is that your business case for investing becomes extremely difficult, not to say, well, it might become a mission impossible. And okay, this situation is what we have to deal with if we try to implement deep energy retrofits in public buildings of local authorities. You might say this is a kind of catch-22 situation. So what we try to address is how to overcome this catch-22 situation. Before doing so, let's agree maybe on ambition levels, at least the ambition levels which we have used in the further analysis here. And okay, this is a range from low ambition S0 up to very high ambition S3, S4. which ranges from 10% in the case of the low ambition, average ambition, let's say 27, 30%. Some might say this is above average, but anyway, FALCO is about ambitious initiatives. So within that range, we have classified this as an average ambition. If you go beyond, let's say 30, there is, we have taken 42 or 40% high ambition. And then the very high ambition is, well, almost building a new building, but okay, you don't do it, you strip your building and you implement all new installations as if it were a new building. That's 80%. Further on in the graphs, I will refer to these S0 up to S3, S4. Okay, now in order to explain how deep energy retrofits cut in the financial situation of a local authority, we have presented a few graphs, and the outcome will really be that it appears to be a mission impossible. Let me explain the graph first. Okay, on the horizontal axis, you see from 0% up to here 60%, the percentage of energy reduction you would try to implement in a building. You might say this is also energy cost reduction. S0 is here at 10%, S1 at about 30%, S2 at 40%. Then on the vertical axis here on the left-hand side, well, it's a bit in Dutch, but it's investments in euros. The investments you would have to make in order to realize these energy efficiency savings. So for 10% here, there is some investments you have to make, but you see, if your ambition increases, this is not a linear curve. This is almost asymptomatic increase here. And here, even on this picture, you will see S3 does not appear. It's even more on the right-hand side. What does this second graph mean, the blue one? This is the net cost savings in euro per year you will have when comparing the investments you made and the energy cost savings you have. So what you will notice here, at 10%, you're making benefits, actually. That's what Anton has called harvesting the low-hanging fruit. That's a profitable business case. Seems attractive, but you run into other problems like financial lock-in. Okay, if you look further on the right-hand side, you see, okay, if you invest more, okay, the return is even better until, okay, the curve flattens a bit. This is the optimum region. This is also the region where, well, typical energy performance contracts are based. If you would invest more, you will see that the return start dropping and dropping pretty fast. Here is a point where at 42%, it's budget neutral. So what you invest is you receive as a return in reduced energy costs. Now, well, what I should have mentioned here, the figures, the actual figures in euros, are for a portfolio of 100,000 meters. It's for one particular building. But okay, what I try to show you is the trend lines here. And if I even zoom out of this picture, okay, then okay, the horizontal axis extends further. Okay, the 80% of the deep energy retrofit appears, and then you see this tremendous cost increase and the tremendous deficit which appears. So this, if you would present this to a financier or someone dealing in the municipality with finances, would raise his eyebrows. This is a mission impossible. Well, how to tackle this issue? Well, definitely some alternative thinking is required. And okay, I've thrown on this slide some bullet-wise some elements which may be part of the solution. Like, for example, which we need to zoom out from the building level up to a higher level, portfolio level, start bundling buildings. That's also what Anton has been highlighting, a very important element which will reappear in my presentation. Another element of the analysis is we should dare to make an analysis of, well, why do we have these buildings? Do we really need these buildings? What are these buildings really used for the time being? I'll come back on that in detail later, but here I just throw some initial ideas which we had when addressing the Mission Impossible. Another part of the solution might be, okay, it's nice to reduce energy demand at the level of your building, but another part of the solution might be acquiring renewable energy which is locally produced. And then I'm not referring to the solar panels on the roof of the building, but this may be renewable energy which is locally generated. For example, in the metropolitan area, this might be district heating grid. In a rural area, you might say this is wind coming from a local wind farm, or this may be methane, this may be biogas coming from a local fermentation installation. This is what I mean here. And striking a right balance between reducing energy demand at building level and acquiring this kind of local renewable energy is important. Of course, it will be a challenge to identify the optimal point, but okay, that's part of the exercise. Performance contracting, like energy performance contracting, as was presented in the previous presentation, is an important part of the puzzle. And also, okay, budget neutrality seems to be a very important element when, as technicians, going to the politicians, knocking on their doors and presenting your project. They often ask, what you're doing budget neutral, in spite of the political ambitions which have been raised in signing the Covenant of Mayors declaration, for example. So are there possibly ways to stretch budget neutrality? Okay, I'll elaborate this further on. Okay, now we have a Mentimeter question about. Yeah, thank you, Annick. Okay, this is a bit similar type of asking questions as you experienced before. It's about whether you disagree on the left-hand side or agree on the right-hand side. And we have made 5 statements. So the first one is political commitments. Do you recognize these statements? Political commitments are not sufficiently translated into tangible action plans. There is a lack of long-term strategy for the municipal patrimonium. There's a pressure for budgets, for neutral, budget neutral solutions, and our quick wins. The business case of deep energy retrofit is difficult or dramatic, and there are budgetary constraints. Yeah, okay, I see. Many people have voted. Where can I see the number? And okay, lower right-hand side, 7%. Okay, but this provides a trend. It seems that most of you are recognizing the boundary conditions which we have taken in conducting our exercise. Okay, some minor adjustments are happening. But it seems as all of you are recognizing and acknowledging the statements here. Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you, Annick. I would say let's proceed to the next slide. Okay, what might be then the proposed solution in between quotation mark? As you have perceived, it's a mixed bag. It's not pinpointing something particular. What you have perceived as well, it's not a financial solution as such, because FALCO initially, the F of FALCO in the acronym stands for financial solutions. But here for this particular target group, it seems that the solution is mixed. Other elements are important as well. Now, in the previous slide, I had thrown in some potential elements. Now, let's try to establish some logical sequence in it and come up with a structured approach. And let's start at strategic level. And at strategic level means that, okay, we zoom out and we have a look at the entire portfolio of a local authority, of a city, municipality, province maybe even, and conduct an analysis in terms of the functional real estate needs. It's not because you have these buildings in your portfolio that they have to stay in your portfolio. You may need to establish objective criteria in order to really assess if maybe some buildings are redundant. Part of that analysis may also be all the buildings, can they be made future-proof? Because maybe there are some limits to doing this, to achieving this. So that's a high-level exercise which has to be conducted first. Now, what the outcome of this analysis, and let me try to proceed here to the next one. Yeah, for one or reason, I can't do it. Yeah, thanks. Okay, once you have identified those buildings which you will keep in your portfolio and which are deemed future-proof, at operational level, what could be done? And then an important rule, which we think is important when further dealing with these buildings, is that you try to synchronize actions you will take with the technical life cycle of your buildings. Another element is, okay, that you strike this right balance between reducing energy demand and using local renewable energy. That's what I already explained. And that you explore maybe new types of EPC contracts which are being explored, which are being tested these days, which may enable you to stretch budget neutrality, which seems to be attractive for the politicians, which ultimately have to approve your project. Okay, the strategic analysis, which we have put forward as part of the solution. The acronym we've proposed is SPREM, Sustainable Public Real Estate Management. Where does it come from? There is already an existing term, which is CREM, Corporate Real Estate Management. In the corporate world, it exists. Initially, we thought, okay, we may inspire ourselves upon this, but in the end, okay, the only thing we kept is the terminology, because the approach is slightly different. There is a much longer vision in public buildings than you need for corporate buildings. So we come up with the acronym Sustainable Public Real Estate Management. And what does this entail? It's like I said, you need to dare to make this analysis. How much space do we really need? How much buildings do we need in order to deliver the services which we as a public organization would like to offer to citizens? This means, of course, that this cannot be handled by facility management departments alone. This you have to knock on other doors within your organization, for example, HR, the Human Resources Department, or even other departments. This is a high-level exercise which is likely to involve also the users of the buildings. Difficult exercise, but crucial exercise, which should be at the start of your exercise. This will enable you to identify buildings which are no longer appropriate, buildings which may be redundant. And okay, this means that you don't have to spend further money on them in maintaining them or investing in them. And you might even consider selling them and cashing the money from them and using the generated income from both these other ways of managing your portfolio to invest in the remaining buildings and financing your building renovations. In the exercise of identifying those buildings which cannot be made future-proof, various elements may be at stake. For example, okay, the buildings may be not structurally suited to entirely renovate it. It's very well possible that the concrete structure is not sufficiently strong or is not does not have the floor plan which you can need, and maybe you cannot change the floor plan. Another, and that's also a very important element, which is often forgotten. You may have a very nice building, which from technical perspective is it's feasible to upgrade it and to invest in it, but it's not well located. It's not in the proximity to public transport. That might be a reason to keep that building out of your portfolio. So as you can imagine, this kind of strategic analysis is a difficult one, is a tough one, but in the end, at the end of the day, it might result in important cost savings and might also pave the way for a much more robust pathway towards climate neutral and future-proof buildings at large. Okay, moving further. Yeah, then what we need to be aware of in this kind of exercise, and several people involved in this kind of exercises have an engineering background and tend to put very much focus on energy and climate as such. So approach these things from their background. Also, a lot of pressure is on making climate neutral buildings, but of course, plenty of other concerns exists when managing buildings. Now, what might these concerns be? You may have safety issues. You need to upgrade your building to bring them in line with safety legislation. You may have asbestos problems. Asbestos needs to be removed. The buildings may not be sufficiently accessible to disabled persons, for example. So you need to address those issues as well. And last but not least, and that's what we experienced in these Corona times, what will buildings be used for in the future? They are likely to be used as places where people meet each other, where people have interaction with each other to get the work done. Buildings are not likely to be the place where you go for focus areas. That's maybe what you can do better at home. So new balances will have to be discovered, but this needs to be reflected in how buildings are organized, what kind of infrastructure is available at buildings. So all these other non-strictly energy-related topics will sooner or later have to be tackled in your buildings. If you manage to identify on a timeline this kind of what you have termed natural renovation moments, and you try to synchronize your energy retrofit with these actions, it may be you may have business cases which are much more attractive business cases, which are much more easy also to defend to other decision makers within your organization. Next slide, please. So this brings us a bit in portfolio. When we try to combine all these elements, this brings us in terms of portfolio thinking. And here on this slide, you see two scenarios which we have used during the discussions. On the left-hand side, you see the accelerated one. On the right-hand side, the stepwise scenario. So these are two completely different for pedagogical reasons. They are a bit blunt, but anyway, this helps us in having the exercise. I'll zoom in now on the accelerated scenario. And like I said, this is a quite blunt scenario. What do you see here on the horizontal axis from 2020 up to 2050? 2050, okay, buildings should be climate neutral. On the vertical axis, in percentage, you see the entire portfolio of an organization going from 0% to 100%. Now, suppose the organization organizes a strategic analysis, a SPREM analysis during, well, which may last 1 or even 2 years because it's a profound exercise. And this exercise reaches the conclusion that, okay, we can get rid of an important percentage of our buildings, which in this graph is now 30%. We sell these buildings, these generate money, and we go for the full Monty, 80% reduction, extremely high S3 scenario, as I've explained before. Like I say, this is yeah, this is a very frank exercise. Selling 30% of your building is a lot, and investing all this in upgrading the remainder of your portfolio is also risky business. But anyway, why have we chosen this 30%? If you calculate the figure, well, the money you will make by selling this building, this will compensate for the difficult business case you have here, for the S3 business case on a theoretical level. So this is quite interesting. Selling about 30% of your portfolio makes a mission impossible possible. That's what you can derive from this slide, basically. Next slide. Yeah, thank you. So this is a more nuanced approach. Okay, the setup is a bit different. You start with the strategic analysis at a very high level. But here you're a bit more careful in making decisions. For example, you say, let's sell 10% of our portfolio. And here on the bottom, let's invest in 10% of our buildings for the extremely high scenario. So that's a bit more careful. This is so you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. So when doing this exercise, this deep energy retrofit, you manage also to learn how to organize this. You may conclude what works and what doesn't work. But okay, this still keeps you with the remaining part of your portfolio being 80%. Okay, based on an analysis of your natural renovation moments, and those are the red dotted lines which I've put here, you might be able to pool some buildings according to various topics, like I said, energy, but also other topics, asbestos removal, accessibility upgrades. You may be able to identify buildings and then establish a different strategy for each pool. For example, for this pool, for which you're not yet sure, will I keep these buildings for a long-term portfolio? I'm not sure what to do. Okay, but in the meantime, better than doing nothing. Let's go for the lowest possible scenario, 10% reduction. That's always possible. Adjusting some settings, not investing much. You're not doing things which might jeopardize the future. So, and after a certain period of time, when you've reached the natural moment, okay, you may be able to sell 10% again, generate money, invest in the other 30% and make these buildings future-proof. The other 40% here, these are buildings where you know, okay, we will keep them for quite some time in portfolio, and we are quite happy to wait for the natural renovation moment, knowing that we are already undertaking action. There is the 10% which we have invested in. This is then 30 plus 10 is 40%. So you're well under your way. You go deeper here. You go for an S2 scenario, which is, according to our calculations, a budget neutral operation. It's a new generation EPC contract, which takes some time. That's also why, okay, it goes almost up to 2040. But then again, you have this moment, we dispose of 10% of our buildings, and the remaining 30% we invest in. So finally, what you have, 3 times 10%, 30% of your buildings sold, and then all your buildings have been retrofitted. This, yeah, what you'd like to know, of course, is what's the financial impact of all these kind of exercises. And then we came up with this kind of graph where you see on the horizontal axis again the timeline between now and 2050, and vertical lines are if an operation is budget positive or negative for the financial accounts of a local authority. Let's first have a look at those operations which are cost money, which do not generate money. This, as you can imagine, is the blunt exercise where you sell first 30% of your buildings, and then you invest. Sorry, I apologize here. This is below here is without selling the buildings. Here you purely invest without selling buildings, and this of course gives you a tremendously negative figure. I should be carefully using the word tremendous anyway. And even later on, it still remains negative. So what you can see in each year, and that's the impact per year on your financial account, negative, negative. Okay, when you approach 2050, it's a bit less, but overall, this is a negative exercise. You're losing a lot of money on this. The staged approach, the stepwise approach, is the one you see here in green. Okay, these are all the steps you see reflected in the financial graph. Still negative. Okay, some years it's more negative than others, but negative. Now, if you add the component of selling buildings, your redundant buildings, this entirely exercise, both in cases of the let's say the purple scenario and the green scenario, all become positive. And okay, slightly a bit negative here first, but then later on it's always above the zero line, and for each and every year it's a positive case. And if you would like to know the entire cost of your operation, you have to make the integral between your graph and the horizontal axis, and this gives you an idea of the total cost, the overall envelope of money you will have spent on upgrading your portfolio. So we think that this kind of visual translation of scenarios may help in better explaining certain scenarios to political decision makers. Next slide, please. Ultimately, what also helps is that you visualize the impact really on each and every building in your portfolio. And that's what they've done here. Sorry, it's still in Dutch written here, but what you can imagine, this is a typical municipal portfolio containing sports infrastructure, police station, swimming pool, kindergarten, town hall, administrative center. Maybe you have some green fields where you will be able to construct buildings, elderly care home. This also is the timeline between now and 2050, and so each building is scored with the initiatives you will take, with the ambition levels you will go for in your energy retrofits, or even if you get rid of a certain building, that's mentioned here as well. And what you can derive from this kind of graphs is the one which you see underneath. This gives you an impression of the pace of carbon reduction of your building portfolio. Because here, for each and every building, each building has a color. Now, the green one seems to be a very dominant color here. And if you look at the legend underneath, this is the administrative center. Like, for example, then you know, okay, by taking the initiatives, which are the investments which are made here, this has this kind of impact on this line. So you know, you know at which pace you will reach your ultimate goal. And in case you would like to adjust certain buildings or modify something, like, for example, the gray building here, what you see here, which has an initial very high energy cost. Here they have decided apparently to lower this cost rapidly. This is the swimming pool. So I can imagine that's indeed a place where you can, but it's worthwhile to invest in this upfront and then keep other investments in other buildings later on where the impact is lower. So again, the combination of thinking at portfolio level, then going back to the building level, and then having a clear picture of the financial costs and the carbon reduction percentages can help in playing, so to speak, with the scenarios, optimizing the scenarios, and also explaining scenarios to political decision makers within local authorities. Here I would like to elaborate slightly, but I think this I've already said this, but this is okay. The choice you will have to make in your buildings between really investing in making your building more energy efficient and acquiring locally produced renewable energy from local wind farms, like I said, from district heating systems. That kind of options are possible. Now, of course, you could say, let's, okay, and I think I have a graph about this. Yeah, the next graph, please. Maybe it's better that I explain this on this graph. What you see on this graph, on the horizontal side, again, the usual timeline, the right-hand side, the percentage that of energy use of a building. So let's assume in 2020, okay, you've already managed to reduce the energy consumption a little bit, and the blue curve represents the reduced energy demand over time. So suppose you you manage to reduce this at building level, and at the same time you grab opportunities in the neighborhood to acquire local renewable energy, which might increase in the future. Then ultimately here, but at the latest in 2050, but this point could already be in 2040 or even earlier, you may reach the point where you strike some kind of balance between reducing energy in your buildings and compensating the remaining demand by acquiring external renewable energy. But I stress it again, local renewable energy, because that's also specified by the European Union. It's not a matter of, this is clearly not a matter of buying certificates from Norway. This is an entirely different story. This is really, you should make an effort in order to produce this local renewable energy. It's not as easy as it may seem at first. But this is not a minimal option. But the point I would like to make here, there is an optimal balance here, and where this balance will lie in time, but also for each building, has to be assessed on an ad hoc basis. That's clear. Okay, then important other element in the bag of solutions, so to say, is performance-based contracting, energy performance contracting, EPC to implement actions. Why is this? Because, okay, like Anton has explained, this is, in our opinion, the best way to achieve a goal, because here ESCOs come up with very creative solutions, and they guarantee that these solutions will work, because if they don't work, they will have to pay a fine. So this kind of output contracts combine the interests of the municipality, the client, the energy efficiency client, and the ESCO. Because otherwise, if the ESCO doesn't reach his targets, he's in trouble. So he will come up with a robust proposal. And this robust proposal is likely to exist in a pool of buildings, a very good selection of buildings, and a robust mix also of energy efficiency and renewable energy. And by renewable energy here, I mean renewable energy which is produced in the building or on top of the building, meaning PV on the roof. It's not the same type of local renewable energy I was talking about in the previous slide. Okay, I won't go into detail because that has been extensively covered by Anton. In the FALCO project, we've also spent some time in upgrading the concept of EBC by what we have called asset-based maintenance. What I mean by this, what you see these days is that energy performance contracts are also including maintenance contracts, where you maintain, where an ESCO is also maintaining the infrastructure which is on site. This combination of striving towards energy efficiency and maintaining, in certain cases, can be a very good combination. If you do this, a new opportunity arises to go for budget neutral EPC contracts. Why is this? Because if you have what we call then asset-based maintenance EPC contracts, That means that you're measuring the conditions from your installation according to a certain protocol, a certain standard, the NEN standard 2767. And this allows you, I don't go into detail now, but for those of you who would be interested, we could devote some time later in a bilateral meeting. You could go for deeper renovations and still being budget neutral. So the average percentage of a typical EPC project, now I've mentioned 35% here, sometimes it's 30%. Well, in any case, you can extend it towards 42%. And that might be interesting to include in all the actions you are likely to undertake in your portfolio. So what are the takeaways from this presentation? So like I said, it's a combination of various factors, but it all starts with a strategic exercise, which we have termed with the acronym SPREM, Sustainable Public Real Estate Management, which assesses the organization's actual need for space and for buildings accordingly. And this is well, here you look beyond facility management. You engage other divisions of your organization, in the first place human resources, but probably also other departments which are using the buildings. And the goal of this exercise should be that you optimize the organizational processes within your organization. This exercise will enable you to identify redundant buildings in which you no longer have to waste money. By wasting money, I mean you don't have to maintaining up to the standard you maintain your other buildings. You don't have to consider investing in them or upgrading on them. And okay, that's money not spent, which you better can spend in buildings which are worth spending in, which can be made future-proof. And if you would even sell those buildings, okay, you can use the generated income also to invest in the selected buildings. Then the synchronization of energy retrofits with natural renovation moments for other purposes, fire safety upgrades, asbestos removal, upgrade to new ways of working in post-corona times is crucial. It's really crucial. It helps you in making enormous cost savings. And then, of course, based on these elements, playing with, well, developing scenarios, playing with scenarios, visualizing scenarios, calculating impact on budget, calculating impact of carbon emissions over time will help you in choosing that scenario which is most appropriate for your organization. So I guess this brings us to the Mentimeter question indeed, which raises the question, okay, the solution, the basket of solutions which you've presented, might these work for you? Or are you reluctant, or do you say, well, yes, this at theoretical level could work, but it won't work in our organization? So I guess the poll is open. Yeah. I can read them again. So the high level exercise, that's the first question. And the better synchronization of the energy retrofits with the technical life cycle of the building. Implement retrofits via performance-based contracting. And then strike optimal balance between reducing energy demand and acquiring local renewable energy. It's quite interesting what I see here. Okay. Because honestly, there is a surprise to me, which is always nice. The first three, I can understand that those ring a bell to you. The fourth one, when I propose this, normally raises some questions or even doubts. because this is sometimes considered by persons that you're going for minimalistic options, that you're not doing your best, so to speak, by tackling the challenge of making your building very much energy efficient. And you're looking for alternative solutions, meaning that it seems a bit as if you're not taking your responsibility. And even here now I see this as the highest score, which, well, yeah, this might be a thing which you have to explore more, because I'm very glad to see that people are open and recognize this solution, but at the same time a challenge, of course, because striking the optimal balance is not an easy question. But okay. Thanks a lot for your contribution and your feedback. Happy to answer any questions. Do we have some time, by the way, Annick, to do so?
Yes, we can have some time for one question or something. And if you want to ask a question, you can just unmute your microphone and take the word.
Well, I see in the chat there is, well, not a question, but a suggestion from a person who says, well, there is a particular project which is a successor project, the Shore 2050 project, which in Flanders is implementing this kind of solutions. And so far, the majority of the Flemish municipalities and cities are participating and, well, exploring this approach and trying to implement how to establish a strategy, a long-term strategy towards 2050.
Thank you for participating in the polls. It's very interesting, as Geert said, to see whether you recognize or not the challenges, or where you are considering the parts of solutions we also are developing for Flanders. So thank you, Luc, Anton, and Geert, for explaining the work, the results of the work we did in the FALCO projects for these three sectors, or for these three breakthrough projects. We still want to do a next step, the road to replication, because when it's only limited to Flanders, it's a pity. And we want to see with you whether there is a possibility to replicate the solutions we developed in the framework of the FALCO projects. I think, Luc, you will explain further.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So basically, we see it as a staged approach, where today we see three stages before that you could implement this kind of solution. The first one is trying to understand the key features. That's already done today. So that's part one. But the next step would be to assess the replication potential in your country or your region, or for your even your local authority. And so it's here that we propose, in the context of the FALCO project, to invite a number of interested local authorities or regions to have one-on-one discussions with the FALCO team to see whether all relevant conditions are met to replicate this kind of solution in your region or your country. If I've seen that there are a number of people, for instance, from Germany, or a number of people from Italy, maybe we could also organize then sessions instead of a one-on-one, but more regional sessions, because at least part of the legal or even economic context will be the same within a certain country. Having done that, and once that we have established that there is a potential, yeah, you can go to the next slide. Maybe it is. And can you do that, because I cannot access it? It's okay. So that's what we said, already said. So if we agree that there is a potential, then you could go try to prepare. So this next slide. Try to see, okay, what are the the elements that you need to tailor to make the solution also relevant for your country. So that could be, for instance, what we have done is develop a number of contractual documents. I'm sure that they will be different in other countries because the regulatory environment is slightly different. So you have all this tailoring that needs to be done to make sure that what is today an instrument that is relevant for the Flemish region in Belgium would also become relevant in your country. And for that, we point to the European City Facility, which basically offers you the financial support specifically targeted at municipalities or groupings of municipalities, where they help to tailor existing solutions, developing new solutions, but they are already at a certain stage, to be able to, let's say, tailor that to your regional and country-specific needs. It's a fast and simplified call procedure. It's a lump sum that is available for external advice or help, a lump sum of 60,000 euros. If you want to have more information, go at the link below, I mean the link that we have added to the slide. But why do we point specifically to this call? Because there's it's a call which is periodically renewed. There has been a first call for projects, which was very successful, and there will be a second one in March, April. The exact date is not, I think, not known yet, but that's more or less the timing that is envisaged. So if we can do in the meantime the step 2 kind of analysis where we assess together with you the replication potential, you may still be in time for the March-April call to submit your request for funding of that tailoring exercise. So what we, for those who are interested, and we could normally provide up to assist three entities with preparing the participation to that call. Thank you, Eric.
Sorry, I went already to the next slide, and that's the next question we have on the Mentimeter poll. If you're interested in the second and maybe in the third step of this replication potential exercise, you can, or we are asking you to give us your name, your mail address, and then the topic in which you are interested specifically, in order that we can contact you in the next days or weeks for the one-on-one discussion in the second step, or and then we can estimate together whether we can go further for the third step. So we invite you to give your name, email address, and the topic in which you are interested for next steps, if you are interested in next steps on the Mentimeter poll. And we will leave it open for a while so that you can also do it further on in the next minutes. In the meanwhile, I want to thank you for your attention during this webinar. If there are some specific questions, don't hesitate to contact us. And here the email addresses of the three presenters of the solutions are given on these slides. We will make a link to the slides available via Climate Alliance or via our website of FALCO. So our website is given here, Financing Local Climate Plans EU, so that you have all information of this webinar. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Luc, Anton, and Geert for the presentation. And I hope we can meet again for more in-depth discussions on replication potential in your local situation in your country. Thank you, and hope we meet again.